Emily had always been a believer in simple joys. The sound of birds greeting the morning, the gentle ripple of water kissing the shore, the kind of peace you could only find when the world wasn't rushing past you. Her little house on the island wasn't grand, but it was hers, a piece of heaven tucked away from the chaos of the mainland. The bridge that connected her to the rest of the world wasn't fancy, just sturdy planks of what her father had reinforced years ago. It had always been enough, until the day it wasn't. The first sign of trouble arrived on a crisp autumn morning. Emily found a neatly folded letter in her mailbox. The HOA's logo was printed in bold at the top, and as she read the word beneath, a small frown settled between her brows. Concerns about the structural integrity of your bridge, safety risk, must be addressed immediately. She sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. It was probably just routine paperwork, a minor inconvenience, nothing more. At least, that's what she thought. To the HOA, it was just a wooden bridge. To Emily, it was her lifeline. She had grown up walking across those planks, the same ones she later crossed with suitcases in hand, when she moved back after her father passed. That bridge had carried memories. Her father's laughter as he taught her how to fish, the glow of fairy lights she'd strung up on her birthday, the soft patter of her dog's paws as he trotted beside her on morning walks. It was more than just a bridge. It was home. So, when the letters kept coming, each one sounding more urgent, more final, Emily's unease deepened. The final letter sealed it. The bridge must be removed within 30 days. Her stomach dropped. Removed? What did they mean, removed? She stormed into the HOA office the next morning, gripping the letter so tightly her fingers ached. The woman behind the desk barely looked up. "Can I help you?" "You can explain this." Emily snapped, placing the letter in front of her. "My bridge is perfectly fine." The woman sighed and tapped her nails against the desk. "You'll have to speak with Karen Lawson, the HOA president." Emily clenched her jaw. Of course. Karen Lawson was the kind of woman who carried herself like a queen ruling over a kingdom of manicured lawns and mailbox regulations. And today, Emily was standing in her court. Karen smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile that said she already knew the ending to a game you didn't realize you were playing. "Emily, I assume you're here about the bridge." "Of course I am." Emily crossed her arms. "You can't just order it to be taken down. That bridge is my only access to the mainland." Karen sighed, flipping through a folder. "The board has determined that the bridge is a liability. If something happens, we could be held responsible." Emily scoffed. "Nothing has ever happened. It's been inspected. It's fine." Karen tilted her head. "That's not what our assessment says." Emily felt heat rising in her chest. What assessment? Who even inspected it? Karen just smiled, and that's when Emily understood. This wasn't about safety. This was about control. Emily wasn't one to back down. She hired an independent inspector. The bridge passed. She took the results to the HOA. They ignored them. She contacted a lawyer. Legal battles take time. But the HOA? They weren't going to wait. One morning, Emily woke to a sound that sent ice down her spine. Chainsaws. She bolted upright, heart hammering. No, she ran outside, bare feet slapping against the wooden porch, just in time to see the destruction. The bridge, her bridge, was being torn apart. "Stop!" she screamed, racing toward the men hacking away at the planks. "You can't do this." A figure stood at the edge of the scene, arms crossed, watching like a queen surveying a battlefield. "Karen." Emily skidded to a stop, chest heaving. "What the hell are you doing?" Karen didn't even blink. The board voted. The bridge had to go. Emily stared at the splinter which sinking into the water below, a hollow ache settling in her chest. "How am I supposed to get home?" she whispered. Karen gave her a thin smile. The nights felt longer now. "That's not my problem." Emily lay awake, and with that, staring at the ceiling of her little island house, the island that had silence like pressing down now felt like a prison. The comforting creaks of the bridge that once swayed, she managed with rowboat, paddling back and forth with supplies. But she spent the last few weeks rowing back and forth. No bridge meant no emergency access. Living life one exhausting trip at a time. No way to leave quickly, but it wasn't sustainable. She felt powerless. A storm rolled until James not arrived. A violent one. Her brother had flown in the moment. Steady down. He heard what happened. But even that was storming enough to onto make the daughter dangerous. Like a soldier ready for war. As Emily sat by the window, he said, watching the rain. His voice softer than terrifying usual. Thought struck her. What do you need me to do? What if she got sick? She blinked up at him. She fell, swallowing the lump in her throat, and no one could reach her in time. He sat beside her phone, wrapping scrolling through unanswered emails from lawyers and city officials. And in that moment, she was a knock at the door made her jump. And neither was a fight. It was James. His jaw was tight, his rain-soaked hair sticking to his forehead. Enough of this, Em. We're taking them down. She swallowed hard. How? He gave a half-smile, that mischievous spark in his eyes she hadn't seen in a long time. We hit them where it hurts. James had always been the fighter between them, the one who stood up to school bullies, the one who talked back to teachers, the one who never let anyone walk all over him. And right now, Emily needed that energy. They started with the legal route. A lawyer scanned the documents the HOA had used to justify tearing down her bridge, shaking his head. They had no right to do this. Emily's heart pounded. So we can sue? The lawyer nodded. You can, but HOA lawsuits take forever. They're hoping you'll give up before it goes anywhere. James leaned back, arms crossed. They don't know my sister. But the HOA wasn't going to roll over. They stalled at every turn. Documents went missing. Calls weren't returned. Meetings were rescheduled over and over. One afternoon, as Emily rode back from the store, she saw Karen standing by the docks with a few other HOA members, sipping coffee, laughing, her fists clenched around the oars. They weren't just winning. They were enjoying it. That's when Emily knew. Legal action wasn't enough. She needed to do something they wouldn't see coming. James was the first to say out loud, if they were willing to destroy your bridge illegally, what else are they hiding? So they started digging, and what they found, it was worse than they imagined. Thousands of dollars of HOA funds were unaccounted for. Fake safety reports had been filed. Emily's bridge wasn't the only one they had falsely condemned. Special favors had been given to certain board members, while other homeowners were ignored. James grinned, scrolling through the evidence. These idiots left a paper trail. Emily felt a mix of rage and excitement. What do we do with this? James smirked. We send it to someone who actually scares them. The FBI. Emily had expected pushback, but she didn't expect the black SUVs. They rolled up in front of the HOA's office one morning, sleek and silent. Two men in dark suits stepped out, flashing their badges. Karen's usual smugness disappeared instantly. Emily stood across the street, pretending to check her phone, but watching every second. Karen tried to act normal, smiling, shaking hands, but there was a stiffness in her shoulders, a tightness in her jaw. And then, when the agents handed her a stack of papers, her hands shook. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood was talking. Did you hear? The HOA is under investigation. I knew something was off about those financial reports. I bet Karen takes a few people down with her. For the first time in years, the HOA wasn't feared. It was falling apart. The investigation hit fast and hard. One by one, HOA members turned on each other. Subpoenas were issued. Bank records were pulled. The truth was unraveling. Karen called for an emergency HOA meeting, try and control the damage. The moment she stepped up to the podium, she knew she had lost. Homeowners didn't greet her with applause. They greeted her with rage. You lied to us. You stole from us. You destroyed someone's only way home, and now we're all paying the price. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. These are baseless accusations. James, sitting in the front row, chuckled. Tell that to the FBI. The room erupted. Karen looked at Emily, eyes filled with something Emily never thought she'd see in her. Fear. She wasn't in charge anymore. Winning against Karen wasn't enough. Emily wanted her bridge back. And this time, she wasn't asking. She took her case straight to the city council. She laid out the facts, the legal documents, the sheer injustice of what had been done to her. This wasn't just about a bridge, she told them. It was about power, abuse, corruption. And if you let this go, it will happen again. The room was silent. Then, one by one, the votes came in. Emily won. Not only was her bridge ordered to be rebuilt immediately, but new rules were put in place limiting HOA power. The entire neighborhood erupted in cheers. And Karen? She resigned before she could be removed. Winning didn't feel like she thought it would. Yes, the bridge was being rebuilt. Yes, the HOA was crumbling. But instead of celebration, Emily felt exhausted. She had spent months fighting, gathering evidence, attending endless meetings. The adrenaline that had kept her going was gone, leaving only bone-deep fatigue. James noticed. "You okay?" he asked one evening as they sat on the dock, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Emily sighed. "I should be, but I keep waiting for something else to go wrong." James smirked. "That's because you know who we're dealing with." And he was right. Kara was still in town, still lurking. And Emily could feel it in her bones. She wasn't done. It started with the little things. Her mail stopped arriving. The post office claimed her address was vacant. Then, her phone bill was mysteriously unpaid, even though she had the receipts to prove otherwise. And then, one night, someone vandalized her dock. She found it the next morning. Garbage bags ripped open. Fish guts and rotting food scattered everywhere. The stench made her gag. James stood beside her, hands clenched. "This is her." Emily swallowed her anger. "She's trying to scare me." James kicked the can into the water. "Yeah, well, it's working, just not the way she wants." But the final straw came 3 days later. Emily was returning home when she saw a "for sale" sign on her property. She stopped in her tracks. It wasn't hers. She hadn't listed her home, but someone had. Her stomach dropped. She ripped the sign out of the ground and stormed into her house, heart pounding. James called the real estate company listed on the sign. After a tense conversation, he hung up and turned to her, jaw tight. "They got a fake approval from the HOA. Karen tried to sell your house." Emily sat down, hands shaking. "She actually thinks she can erase me." James knelt in front of her, his expression deadly serious. "Then it's time we finish this." Emily didn't wait. She marched straight to Karen's house that evening, not bothering to knock. She found Karen in her pristine living room, sipping tea like nothing was wrong. Karen glanced up, feigning surprise. "Oh, Emily." "What surprise?" Emily slammed the fake real estate sign onto the table. "You went too far." Karen sighed dramatically. "I don't know what you're talking about." Emily's hands trembled, but not with fear, with fury. "You tried to sell my house." Karen smirked, swirling her tea. "I was simply following HOA regulations. Your home was improperly registered." "The HOA is dead, Karen. You lost." Karen's smirk faltered. Emily took a step closer, her voice ice cold. "And if you don't stop your little games, I will personally make sure you don't just lose your position. I'll make sure you lose everything." For the first time, Karen's mask cracked. She wasn't in control anymore. Emily was. Karen's grip on her teacup tightened. "You think you've won?" Emily exhaled slowly, forcing herself to smile. "No, Karen. I know I have." She turned on her heel and walked out. Karen didn't follow. She didn't have to. She knew she had lost. The bridge was finally finished. Stronger, sturdier, a symbol of everything Emily had fought for. She stood at the edge of the dock, running her fingers over the smooth wooden railing. The fight was over. She had her home back. James walked up beside her. "So what's next?" Emily let out a slow breath. For the first time in months, she didn't have to fight, didn't have to look over her shoulder. She was free. "Anything I want," she said, smiling. And for the first time in a long time, she actually believed it. Final thoughts. This wasn't just a battle over a bridge. It was a battle for justice, for standing up against people who think they can control everything. Emily proved that when you fight for what's right, you win, even when the odds are stacked against you. And Karen? She learned the hard way that some bridges burn both ways.